In early March 2026, a projectile struck a commercial oil tanker navigating the deep waters off the coast of Oman. Within days, commercial transit through the region dropped by more than 95%, and global oil prices surged past $120 a barrel. The immediate comparison was to the 1980s tanker war, where Iraq and Iran fired hundreds of Exocet missiles at commercial shipping vessels. Despite the high volume of strikes and hundreds of damaged ships, that conflict failed to disrupt even 2% of total shipping traffic moving through the area. This chart illustrates the discrepancy. We see the 1980s conflict barely registering a 2% drop in traffic, compared to the near-total shutdown of more than 95% in 2026. The market absorbed an 8-year war of attrition, but collapsed in less than a month today. The trigger for this rapid shutdown was the late February joint U.S.-Israel air campaign known as Operation Epic Fury, which prompted Iran to immediately weaponize its maritime borders in retaliation. The resulting shutdown represents a compound failure of the entire maritime system, merging military strategy with economic and legal warfare. The Strait of Hormuz has transformed from a managed geopolitical risk into a global vulnerability, where asymmetric leverage dictates the flow of the world's energy. The Persian Gulf's most restrictive point is exactly 39 kilometers from shore to shore, but navigable water for deep draft tankers is tighter. Vessels are forced into a traffic separation scheme, restricting them to inbound and outbound lanes only 2 miles wide, separated by a buffer. Very large crude carriers here have zero capacity for evasive maneuvers. Recognizing this, Iranian military doctrine shifted from large surface fleets, building their strategy around the islands of Keshm, Larak, and Hormuz. Scattered throughout the passage, they provide natural cover for launching attacks. In a constrained waterway, a single massive cargo vessel can be quickly overwhelmed by a swarm of remote-controlled surface vehicles. In 2026, these tactics matured. Attackers integrated AI-enabled targeting, explosive suicide drones, and advanced GPS jamming to blind and disable commercial ships. The systematic targeting of various ship types throughout early March proved the effectiveness of this hardware. Commercial traffic plummeted by 70% in just 2 days. By March 5th, an underwater drone attack occurred near Kuwait, over 800 kilometers from the strait itself. The high-risk combat zone now encompassed the entire Persian Gulf. Modern automated warfare means a state actor no longer needs a standing navy to close a chokepoint. Disabling a single vessel in a 2-mile lane turns the ship itself into a physical barricade. The physical barricades trigger the economic clock of war. Once the risk to vessels became apparent, providers revoked war risk insurance, rendering the route commercially unviable before full military blockades were even declared. This chart displays the resulting macroeconomic exposure. The strait facilitates 25% of global seaborne oil, 19% of liquefied natural gas, and 33% of seaborne fertilizer. Trapping this fertilizer trade creates immediate secondary market shocks, spiking agricultural input costs and threatening food security worldwide. Regional powers built resilience against this scenario. This map details Saudi Arabia's east-west pipeline, redirecting crude from the Persian Gulf to the Red Sea. By converting gas lines, Saudi Aramco increased this route's capacity to 7 million barrels per day, mitigating the initial supply shock. But even these overland bypasses are exposed targets. In early April, an Iranian drone strike on a Saudi pumping station temporarily reduced the pipeline's throughput by 10%. While the crude oil market can partially absorb the shock through these diversions, the liquefied natural gas market cannot. Major exporters like Qatar and the United Arab Emirates rely entirely on highly specialized maritime infrastructure. They possess zero pipeline alternatives for their LNG exports. Without bypass capacity, a closure at Hormuz removes gas shipments from the global market entirely, triggering immediate price spikes in Asian import basins. Because physical infrastructure for gas is rigid, the crisis guarantees systemic scarcity contagion across the global economy, regardless of how much crude oil is diverted over land. At the core of the physical disruption is a deep conflict over international maritime law. This visualization compares 2 legal frameworks. On the left, transit passage, upheld by the U.S., guaranteeing ships continuous, unimpeded movement. On the right, Iran's stance of innocent passage, granting the coastal state authority to halt traffic, conduct inspections, and suspend navigation for national security. In early April, a temporary ceasefire opened a brief window for high-stakes diplomacy in Islamabad to reconcile these opposing views. The negotiations quickly stalled. The U.S. required a total halt to Iranian uranium enrichment, while Iran demanded comprehensive war reparations and the unfreezing of billions in sovereign assets. The talks collapsed, and in mid-April, Iran implemented a sweeping new maritime order for the region. The Iranian military redrew the shipping lanes to force vessels directly into their territorial waters. Ships attempting to use this route, dubbed the Tehran toll booth, were required to pay mandatory transit tolls reaching up to $2 million. The U.S. countered this escalation by enforcing a strict naval blockade on Iranian ports, aiming to cut off the country's economy entirely. International treaties hold little weight when a coastal state uses asymmetric force to successfully extract sovereign tolls from an international waterway. The waterway is now heavily militarized. Massive naval carrier groups have deployed into the region as the U.S. enforces its blockade. The geopolitical fallout continues to expand. China condemned the blockade, citing threats to its own economic interests, and responded by launching independent naval drills directly in the strait. The secondary financial risks are also mounting, with credit rating agencies placing downward pressure on Gulf sovereign debt as regional stability erodes. The 1980s doctrine of securing shipping lanes through the sheer presence of external naval patrols is obsolete. Today's commercial shipping industry will not operate under the threat of uninsurable, AI-enabled hybrid warfare. We are left in an escalation trap. Neither Washington nor Tehran can offer concessions without suffering a severe strategic defeat. Until global powers find a way to diplomatically separate maritime access from broader regional conflicts, the entire world economy remains tethered to a 21-mile geographic flaw that it can neither bypass nor control.